Okay, so we will carry on next with the development services, and the staff on that are Doug, Danny, and Ellen, but I believe Deputy Mayor Braden's going to start off.
That's right. At the break, it was determined that I would start. So, now looking at both sets of notes just to make sure. We had a really good conversation. I think the group agreed with the council's priorities and just talked about how we could work to move them forward. So we added words to some of the, so the first priority, for example, is now promote and facilitate construction of affordable and attainable safe housing. So we added words to that, so it wasn't just construct affordable and attainable housing. We wanted to promote and facilitate, which is really more of our goal at development services and council even, than actually building that. That included the tourist accommodation review and improved housing options to address the gaps that are in our community. At any point, if you feel you need to step in, please speak up. Number 2, support the private sector in growing and diversifying the tax base. So we want to define the role of the town and the private sector in the development of the town. We felt it was very important to have a CIP education session within the first quarter of 2019 so that everybody understands what a CIP entails, which incentive does this council want to use, and should they be expanded to other nodes within the town. So that's a Q1 objective. On our list was to determine the location of the casino, but we felt that determining the location wasn't our role as a town, that's Gateway's role, but that there should be information coming forward. There's meetings in Q1, we expect this information to come forward, and we're certainly working with Gateway to make this happen. So some of the things we found that were on our list were actually to-dos, so they weren't out-and-out council priorities as much as inherited issues, concerns, problems, statements like determine the location of the casino. Well, that's beyond the scope of the Development Services Division. So we just kind of talked about it and acknowledged that we couldn't do it, but that we could help those that were doing it. Biggest part of the conversation probably took place around the customer service focus. So within Q3, Q4 of 2019, the building planning departments wanted to pilot a customer service model. So delivering service so that they were more accessible to the community, so that there was a one-stop shop for service, so that people weren't coming in and kind of being told, or either phoning in or coming in and kind of being passed from person to person, so that there was ownership of that customer or that resident when they came into the building. So that was a really big one that kind of, most of our conversations went back to customer service focus. So it was economic development, it was planning, and it was building. Skipping over ECDev building and planning, timing for strategy from the ECDev building planning department. So again, the 3 departments working together to increase customer service. They talked about Q1 or Q2 looking to establish a builders forum to determine methods to improve the process, and again, customer service experience. Third objective was building a safer and healthier community, mindful of the needs of the various neighborhoods in town. So in there were a couple of existing problems that were identified, but we really felt they weren't council priorities. The priority was that old outstanding issues need to be dealt with. I think that's a real focus for this council, is let's deal with the past, let's resolve it, let's move on. So I think there's real support for finding solutions to these ongoing problems. We want to be an age-friendly community, which ties into the affordable attainable housing. We talked about an age-friendly community being specific, we talked about being an age-friendly community. One of those things that also came up was, and it was in relationship to snow clearing, was sponsorships, organizations that can maybe help. Things like Snow Angels, which is a project in Calgary. Then we kind of went off on a tangent on Project Kindness. which would handle all sorts of problems, kind of a neighborhood program, neighbors helping neighbors. And this would address issues for small children and the elderly. It was a really good discussion. It probably took longer than maybe it should have, but I think it really kind of created a focus on what really is important. And the municipality probably can't take care of every person's need every day of the week in a timely manner to make everybody happy, but maybe there's a way that we can encourage neighbors to help neighbors, and if we all look out for each other, maybe we can make our community more age-friendly in that way. From a policy perspective, they looked at inserting age-friendly policies into the new official plan, community benefit agreements from the Municipal Act, the customer service model they really felt would address the age-friendly, expanded trails and bikes, though it's not our job. I think it certainly ties into what Public Works is doing, what Community Services is doing, and something that's discussed when new developments come into town. Kevin L. is in our list here. As ownership, planning would be involved in the OP part of the Transportation Master Plan, but I guess the rest of it is yours. So number 4.
Sorry, just before we go there, Danny, did you have something that you wanted to
Yeah, I think it's just a general theme of the conversation, and it's fitting that we have economic development and sort of in this group, and really what it comes down to is creating an investment climate in the town. And if you think of that in sort of the traditional sense, your mind would automatically go to economic development, that type of thing. But it becomes more than that when that climate can extend beyond economic development. And when you talk about things like kindness, it's really about creating an environment or creating a climate where businesses can invest in people are really investing in themselves. They're opening a business, and we're knitting into our policy fabric mechanisms that make it more streamlined for people to do that, and it's creating opportunities for people to invest in people. So when you talk about something like a kindness initiative, it's really how can we leverage our position as town hall or within development services to make it easier, pave the way for people to invest in people, and it all ties back to that sort of sense of community. So that theme is constantly sort of coming up in our conversations, in that it's really about the climate that we can set within the community through our efforts that will sort of dictate the level of success that we get in the community, whether it be a developer coming in, or whether it be a business trying to open, or whether it just be through some community initiatives that are going to have a meaningful impact.
And I think you've had experience with this type of thing elsewhere, but I think that also ties into the fact that the CIO has brought something forward later to talk about a values statement, and I think that type of thing can tie in nicely with it.
So and what's really interesting, and just to bring the point what Danny's explaining and the mayor's explaining, is that we focused on customer service, and we focused on affordable housing, and we focused on safe housing, and then the fourth one was the business community. And all of our discussion, the first session was a massive brainstorming, and what Danny's talking about is really customer service. And it's a philosophy of customer service. And Danny put in the work, I really have to credit him that there's a philosophy of kindness in approaching customer service. So we thought, if we're going to build a model into this the working relationship between the three departments, we can focus on that customer service. And some of the topics we talked about, for instance, there's a discussion about the snow windows and the request that they can file. Of course, there's a cost to that. So we looked at that in terms of, well, what are some of the other solutions that the municipality as government can provide to the community? And we thought, well, first of all, we're focusing on affordable housing. So multiple housing choices. So if you're living in your house, but you're too old to live there anymore, we could probably use an affordable housing plan or strategy so that we can create more housing choices for them, so they do have a choice. They don't have to, they can move to a lesser an apartment. And then we also thought, the swimming program. The neighbors could help out as well, and what can the town do to promote those energies that already exist in town, the friendliness of the town. So the kindness project came into play there as well, and connected to the customer service. It was a very convoluted discussion, but it all revolved around those same two tenets. And we thought about the relationship with the business community as well. And there was a thought that, well, we do have two main businesses in town. There's tourism, and then there's also the service industry around the residential growth. But it's all the apples are in one cart. So what about if we could focus on some sub-industries, and they could be cycling tourism, or they could be the arts community. So those are other focuses that we could work on. So there was a lot of brainstorming, and a lot of our Q1, Q2 came later when it came to the department goals. But it was a healthy discussion, if not musical.
Yes, we did. Yes, we spoke a lot, but I think we were all kind of coming together to a good place. So, the fourth council priority was to determine the town's role in the development of downtown area and beachfront. So that included the status of the implementation of the downtown plan, which is something that will be addressed in Q1. Beachfront development, does council wish to move forward as is or revamp it again, Q1. And the third item on that list was property specific, so we felt that it wasn't, it was more of a to-do. And the role of the council is to resolve the issue and move with the landowner to move this forward and get it off the to-do list. So then, in terms of departmental priorities, do you want to go through them line by line, or do you just?
Line by line.
Yeah, so, okay, I need to tell you, there's 6 pages down the side before you answer that question.
I'll go through it very quickly. The official plan update. It's to update our official plan, which dates to 2002, which is a fairly basic official plan document in comparison to modern standards. So the exercise is to bring it up to date. And much of the things that we've been talking about today, trails, affordable housing, growth plan issues, transportation, all of that would be built into the new official plan. So that is really the goal of the official plan, to guide the growth. And a main principle of it is the nodes and corridors. So the province wants intensification in municipalities. We would like to protect the integrity of existing neighborhoods from infill and townhouses beside existing homes. So the nodes and corridors is direct the growth to the nodes along the corridors and protect those neighborhoods. There would be a required update to the comprehensive zoning bylaw, simply to bring in line with the new official plan. The downtown LPAT appeals, we expect there's an appeal one appeal on each of the official plan and zoning bylaw and the community improvement plan. We are working with the appellates on each one of those and hope to have them all ratified by the end of this year. The inclusionary zoning and affordable housing, they both tie into the creation of affordable housing strategy. There are a lot of aspects of a housing strategy: secondary units, retirement units, the TAC, a mix of housing. CFP could be doing something like CFP to encourage affordable housing throughout the town, not just in the main node. So there is a lot of aspects to a housing strategy that we could explore. The cycling and active transportation, much of those are ongoing projects, so they continue to be goals. Healthy Communities Network is a long-standing and very effective advisory committee. That's an ongoing. And the Age-Friendly Community Advisory Committee, that is, we have one staff member who sits on that committee, so that's ongoing as well. There are exterior aspects to the work that facing the planning department. So the growth plan is requiring another round of official plan update once we get it done the first time. But it's not as nearly comprehensive as the first round. It's simply an adjustment for future population growth to 2041. The LPAT is, will require, so this ties into customer service. What we hope to do is, the LPAT makes it a lot more complex for the planning process. We're looking to streamline our process to balance that. Cannabis legalization, under item number 1, cannabis retailing, staff will be reviewing and assessing retailing as it occurs in other municipalities and report back to council in Q4 in December. Cannabis growing, production, and manufacturing, staff are currently undergoing a review of the zoning bylaw update to address those items, which currently are not spoken to in the current official plan. And cannabis consumption, it's really a bylaw issue, but there is a team and planning on that team. The county municipal comprehensive review, staff are involved in that only because it leads into the official plan update. And the NDCA have several different studies underway which planning staff are involved with. One of them is the integrated watershed management plan, and we did have a request that staff provide an update on the study that was done a year ago or a year and a half ago on the flood mapping for the Wasaga River. And I'm going to have to lean on public works to help us out with that. If you guys want to see that.
We've been providing some information to the NDCA, but we haven't seen the deliverable yet. There's some changes there.
And then the next heading, planning department budget requests, we did not get into discussion.
Yeah, and I just, when I'm looking at this under the section of policy, your first comment about the growth plan, it's not going to be as extensive as the previous, work that's done. I think we all have to bear in mind that that's assuming that nothing changes at the provincial level. Yesterday, so all the best laid plans we have can be on a pen stroke. It all of a sudden becomes a huge issue. So and it's the same with, you mentioned earlier, Bill 66 says in there, there are external factors that, we do our best to plan going forward with what we know today, but tomorrow it can be a whole new ballgame, and it can be costly, and it can be time consuming, and it can have us reinventing the wheel, whether we do it individually or as a bunch of municipalities. So I just want to, kind of for all of our sake, remind us that, this is always a liquid process, and if we had nice even keel that we were guaranteed going forward, it would be a lot easier, but that's not how planning works, or policy works for that matter. Anyway, just
through you, Chair, is quite right. It's an ever-changing landscape. What I find very interesting, though, is that although the town is undergoing a long overdue official plan update, much of the things, many of the things that we talked about today and last Thursday in terms of the initiatives and goals of the other departments are things that would be ensconced into an official plan, which we don't expect to have in place until a year or so, but the town's already moving forward with creating a livable community. So it's a matter of getting them ensconced into policy, but we're already after them. The official plan is a guiding document, but we're trying to find it, which that's a credit to the town.
Building?
Yeah, I'll be quick actually. So, kind of have, the efforts of the building department in the next year, aside from delivering our core service, some of the initiatives that we would look to undertake would sort of be what I would refer to as outward facing, and then some of the things that we need to do are inward facing. So, the relationship with Georgian College, that's something that's ongoing, and we plan to make that a long-term relationship in terms of bringing in co-op students. Getting some kind of a developer liaison group going in Q1 would be something that I think, in terms of supporting the priorities of this council, is really, really important. I think we need to move quickly on this and get those people to the table. You see a little farther down my list is the opportunity to get various regulatory agencies together, and we've marked that as a Q4 initiative. simply because I think we need to lay the groundwork for that first through the development liaison group. As well as, you know, outside the regulatory agencies, some kind of a builders roundtable. I've even in the past had things like a plumbers roundtable where they all grow out of that larger group, but it's an opportunity for, you know, those stakeholders within our community to get together and you know, for us to be able to encourage some consistency across the board in terms of how they deliver their service. And then in terms of something more inward is just this constant conversation that you're hearing us have around, you know, our communications within town hall and how we better align our services as individual departments so that at least to the public and to our stakeholders, they see us as one winner as much as possible. In terms of technology, again, these are things that are somewhat more inward facing, those initiatives. You know, Q1 definitely, I would say it's begun now that we're looking at how we manage our files, and that is something that will be an ongoing effort from now on. Q2, a gap analysis, beginning a gap analysis on the current software program that we're using within the building department, and see if it is capable of meeting our needs, and if it is, what do we have to do to turn on the functionality that may be missing, and if not, what is a suitable replacement. And then moving the department towards digital submissions would be something that we begin to undertake in Q3, and that's something, again, that I think our relationship with Georgian College, we can really leverage that and use the skills that are available to us through them to help us move towards that digital environment. And then enhancing our image in the community. Again, this is something, it's a right now initiative, it's a Q1 initiative, where we would be looking to find ways. And certainly at this point, I'd like to say that, you know, we're open to ideas from the public in terms of if there's an event. I think I've described before the permit palooza event that we ran in Innisfil. If there's something that we could come up with here that is more unique to Wasaga Beach and more specific to the needs of this community, I'd certainly like to hear from the public on that, or any members of council if you have any ideas. And enhancing our website material, that is something that I don't feel we can get to in Q1, and something that we would begin to work on in Q2. And with that, if there are questions tonight.
I had a question with respect to, there was a 95.5% statement here, and I wanted to understand what it was in reference to.
The tax base.
There it is there. So it ties into 95%. There, right there, ties in 95% private and 5% commercial.
And I think the word private is probably a typo. I think that the conversation, remember, was
It's
taken around
residential
the
versus
tax base.
commercial tax base.
Yeah, so that should say, it's with reference to the tax base. And that should likely say residential.
The assessment split? Is that what
Yes.
we're talking about? Okay.
Councilor Blanchard?
Yes, I think before we go on to economic development, we didn't pause after Deputy Mayor's presentation. And the comment was made that the casino location is not the role of the town. And again, I would like to suggest that is inaccurate. Certainly in my discussions directly with the executive on Gateway and conversations with previous council, certainly Gateway was very interested to work with the municipality. And location is very important because there's a number of locations, and each one could impact economic benefit to our community differently. Each one will create a different traffic pattern as it relates to all of our existing businesses. And I believe that council absolutely has the ability to influence the choice of the location. And so I just I want to make the record is saying that. I won't go into all the detail right now, but as we go through the process, I will have considerable communication to contribute to that. process.
Yeah, and there will be an appropriate meeting to discuss that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll carry on.
Economic development, would you like to take the lead, Ellen?
I think if you look at my part of the document, most of it supports council's priority to support the private sector in growing and diversifying the tax base to that point of the 95% residential and only 5% commercial tax base. The first part is really having a seat at the table with all these different organizations so that we can bring back information and be part of the planning that takes place around the region and the county. A big piece of the work plan is to attract public and private business investment and to work with the community to articulate a list of private businesses to attract and establish a strategy to pursue them, and then identify a way of lobbying and bringing them here. To identify industrial and commercial land opportunities and shovel-ready investment sites, I think we, in our group, decided that was really important. It would be nice to be able to deliver that by too. Create investment attraction marketing collateral, digital, doesn't have to be costly, and explore potential community investment plan tools that can attract business investment. So that's been discussed already. Under tourism, where we want to promote Wasaga Beach to the world, we do have the tourist destination management plan that is ready to go to council to be reviewed and approved. If approved, it will really create a very robust work plan for tourism with tactics that are already laid down, and we'd like to see that, if possible, in Q1, at least the approval. Transitioning the Visitor Information Center from the Chamber of Commerce to the town, that's comes up in the general government Q1, so conversations are happening. But we have some exciting ideas on how we could do that in a unique and nimble way in 2019, and need some council direction just to get going and be ready to hit the market in Q2 if possible. Launch a new town branding strategy. That's an undergoing process that started last fall, and it will be finalized in Q1, coming to council for approval, hopefully in March, but council will have 2 opportunities to have presentations prior to that. Improve our tourism market, that really is ongoing and part of the tourist destination management plan if approved. Industry capacity building, really part of our regular work plan, and as in previous years, some type of tourism conference in Q4 in partnership with our TO7 or other tourist partners. The T3 Accelerator Program, which was a really exciting and successful pilot project which teams up our tourism and businesses with coaches and mentors for the life of their business, is going to be a permanent project and will roll out in February, so that's Q1, and there should be an announcement coming forward, and that's an exciting piece. We want to work closely with the events unit if possible to support their efforts and expand our events with tourism potential, and again, depending on council's direction for that. And ongoing, as always, within our marketing plan should be promoting cycling tourism and in time the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. We want to strengthen up the way we've been attracting and retaining other business as well as our tourism market. We would like to support the local business so that they can grow and provide employment and again bolster up the commercial tax base. In doing so, we think there's opportunities to conduct yearly job fairs, again in partnerships with the county, review the recommendations of the Labor Supply Task Force, and this comes always back again to attainable housing and transit, which is part of general government and public works. There's a lot of overlap. Hope I'm not going too fast. We want to attract and retain
Actually,
families.
can you just be a little bit louder?
Can I? Can I be louder? Again, attract and retaining families, that came up in general government's plan under Q1. Business retention, we think that there's a great opportunity to hold some biannual meetings to understand what the key issues are within our business community, and to do so, there's opportunities to collaborate and work with the chamber Also to work with communications plan, in having council networking meetings with the public. All these things can feed into that. We need to continue to work with the Small Business Enterprise Center and the Center for Business and Economic Development to provide ongoing professional development of existing business, and to assist business owners, particularly tourism operators, to enhance their online presence, websites, listings, social media, even help with TripAdvisor. We see a real need there in the community. The following are just some initiatives that I added to this, just to make council think if there's some possibilities that we could move forward with. An economic development advisory committee would be wonderful, where we have members of the community, just like the tourism advisory committee, members from different sectors of our business community come together quarterly, constituted by council. Arts and culture, we need to reach out to our cultural practitioners to engage them locally. A lot of them aren't here. We keep learning all the time about people that are moving to Wasaga Beach with incredible skills and talent, but they are leaving here to go work in other communities around the region, and we want to give them a nice cultural home base that they can work through. I would like to work with the farmers market to help them rebrand to become an artisan or a night market in a location that would attract both residents and visitors, and again to work with the events unit to support their goal of creating more family-oriented events. We have an opportunity this year to celebrate the Chamber's 80th milestone anniversary. Simple approach is some banners that we can use for 1 year, but we can also help them to raise awareness in the community of their important work. I see that there's a little bit of a need to make Nancy Island more easily identifiable and inviting, and the council's meeting with MNRF coming up in Q1 might be an opportunity to just mention that. I feel that there's a need to really encourage our residential community to support local business, to love local business, and understand the value of local business. So perhaps collaborating with the Chamber, Small Business Month is a good time to do this, although it should always be happening. Make people realize the value of having that strong commercial base here in town. And just some other conversations about cultural celebrations and digital platforms. But I know Danny and other people would probably support the idea that we could use a trade show booth so that we can go out and spread the word about what we need in Wasaga Beach. And that's me. Councilor Foster?
Thank you. A couple just quick comments or perhaps questions. I'm glad to see under the initiatives for consideration by council, you mentioned art and culture. Abstractly, you mentioned history through Nancy Island, so that's covered, and that's great. I also do think, though, that, and this is in conjunction with the development committee, with the deputy recommendation earlier. If we're looking at, and the one thing you said, someone said, promote Wasaga Beach to the world. I think we also have to promote Wasaga Beach to Wasaga Beach.
Yes.
But there is the idea of sports, health, and environmental tourism, or that has to dovetail with the culture, art, and history, because it's low impact. It takes advantage of the beautiful resources we have and would attract, if we can promote the cross-country skiing or whatever it is, the walking on the beach, the hiking, it's all there. Because again, that's through, to me, the sports, health, and environmental tourism is the piece that can go into our shoulder season specifically.
Yes, Councillor, and I think we might see that come out strongly in the new brand proposal.
Okay, and then the other little question I have related to this, and I got an email from someone on a slightly related topic, is we all know, and we've known for years, that during the Quebec shutdown, we get a ton of Quebecers. That's one of our largest segments for that period of time, people coming from Quebec. They love the beach. My question, and I should know the answer to this, but I don't, is do we have bilingual pamphlets available at Town Hall?
I think the answer to that might be no, and I would defer to the CAO to answer that. Do we have bilingual pamphlets here about municipal issues? Yeah. So if you look at mine, I glossed over it this time because I keep feeling like I'm trying to sell everybody on an idea. But you know, being my first year in this job, I spent a lot of time at the beach, and I was quite surprised how many people were speaking French. And then I realized that we spent a lot of RTO7's money on this big campaign to bring them here, but when they got here, we didn't say hello, right? So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could build on that and leverage the opportunity to attract more visitors from Quebec during that time period, which is the construction holiday at the end of July. And by doing some really cheap, quick fixes, we could create a cultural celebration during those 2 weeks where we're already doing some marketing, or sorry, some programming in the marketplace. So instead of the entertainers that we usually get, let's get some francophone folk artists from around the province of Ontario. I don't think we have to bring in people from Quebec to entertain us. We could make sure that there's some translation 101 for tourism people. We could ask Nancy Island if they could get some French information. We could do more, even with some penance. I'm talking too much, I see that.
No, with all due respect to the mayor's call for ABBA-fest. which I think has
Everybody
legs.
loves ABBA.
But we could do like Poutine Fest. Just saying, throw it
So
out.
I said menu items in our eateries. It was really an idea that I thought we could execute so easily with just tweaking some of the things we're already doing, but some of the other partners that I needed to help me get this happen didn't have the capacity this year. So it's still in there, and I think we could do it, and I think there's some little cheap things we can do this year to already start to greet the people that we get them. We might not be able to go out and do the big come, we've got more happening for you. But when the ones that are here, who are gonna come back next year, if we take care of them, we could build up.
And sorry, last comment, I promise. And that last thing he said, if we take care of them. So in another life, I've had people walk in, and they've driven 8 hours from Montreal, from Quebec City, from wherever they are, and they arrive to something that isn't built what they thought they were getting.
Yeah.
And, you know, because, so their reply is, I can't get my money back, so I'm going back home.
Yeah.
And you go, that word of mouth there is a critical flaw. That line, if we take care of them, and that has to be our view, and we have to encourage all our businesses, regardless of what capacity they're in. And it's not just for the francophone, but it's for everyone. Is that philosophy that we were talking about earlier, the philosophy of kindness, it has to be reflected. And that right across the board, from everything we write, do, and say. That sounds, you know, kind of very fairy
It
stuff.
sounds like what
but
we
it's-
already should know,
Yes.
but it's not being practiced.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilor Swansea?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just gonna say too, is the other side of that is this is attracting taxation revenue from outside the province. So how it's perceived by provincial levels of government, there, especially with open to business, there might be funding or something comes available that we should investigate to support moving some of that forward.
Well, that cultural celebration, I attended the Celebrate Ontario Grant Seminar, and they liked it. They really liked it. Now, mind you, that's only 15% of your budget, and it's not, I don't see it as a costly execution, but yes, and I'm sure there's translation money, and I'm sure there's other opportunities. There's also a Champlain Trail that I've been trying to get more information on, because they have a whole tourist department. So there's lots of ways to collaborate with other partners, so it's not all on us, but to make it happen. Councilor King?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think we got a direct answer from Councillor Foster's question about bilingual publications in the town. Do we have it or don't we have it?
I don't believe.
I don't believe we do.
No.
Was there not a bilingual website created last summer for tourism? I thought that was one of the RTO7 joint interest.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that, but that sounds like something that would have been done.
Yeah, I
And there
thought
may be
that
a
there was
choice.
something so that
Yeah.
instead of printing, it was kind of
Yeah.
done more modern.
There are really inexpensive platforms that you can add to any website. There's one called Browse Aloud that you can that will translate your own website into 99 languages, plus read aloud to people if they have vision issues. So these things are again, they're easy fixes that can really support a lot of people. With our tourism collateral, I don't think so.
Well, if I can add to that, I think part of that discussion that I was, not part of, but I was listening to, was that today's visitor isn't going to the Chamber of Commerce and picking up 10 brochures. That's not typically how we plan our vacation anymore. We go to our smartphone and we put in Wasaga Beach. So it was more, the investment should be in the website, we should be in the search engine optimization, top 2. And I thought that was where those marketing dollars, being bilingual, were being encouraged to be spent. So whether they were spent is a question,
Well,
but that was the discussion.
There was a strong digital marketing push into Quebec through social media with RTO dollars last year. So I was, and what happened to me was I was getting all the comments to translate on Google and then respond to. So it was quite an interesting summer. People that loved it here and the people that had nightmares, or even emails that I had to translate and respond to from people that were disappointed. Councillor Kenny, you have another?
No, I don't doubt that money's better spent in the digital world. Thank you for that. But I'm just looking for the boot hit the trail. We have, and we encourage our tourism from that back to come to look at our great water, and unfortunately, they get a parking ticket. Is it, are we doing things like that to enhance them? Because it is another official language. I'm not saying it's incumbent upon the town to push that, but I'm just wondering if avenues where maybe it's within that festival, we talk to our tourism and say, what did you like about the town? What didn't you like about the town? Did we communicate right or did we not communicate right? And how can we improve that?
So I'm hearing that you kind of like the idea.
Maybe.
Okay, is there any other questions of Ellen? Okay. So that wraps up the first item on under item number 3. I think it was great teamwork between council and staff to get to this point, and I think I see a path forward over the coming year, but coming 4 years. Next, George, you were going to discuss the mission statement, vision statement, and the possibility of another statement.
Value statement, yeah. Thank you, Worship. So this, what you see on the screen here is the current mission and vision statements that are contained in the town's budget. They are the, I think, page 2 in the budget, and basically were developed in 2010. Councilor Wells and I were just chatting a little bit earlier about the process that we went through to create that, and some around the table may recall the process. But basically, in 2010, these 2 statements were created, and that was kind of what we've been working with. There was some minor changes in 2014, and now they're before us again. And the first statement is the mission statement, and that's basically what are we all about? Why are we here? What do we do? And so it outlines what council is responsible for. So as part of this, we need to look at our mission and see if there's anything here that should change, or are we satisfied with that as it's written? Is there anything that we should be adding to or taking away from? So that, if we can deal with the first one, and then we'll go to the vision after.
Okay, does anybody have comments? Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, Your Worship. As we went around the table, culture was talked about a lot, not so much culture and historical culture, but culture. So I'm just wondering if something along the lines of foster a culture of community spirit and ambassadorship to guests, because I believe that is the role of council to do that, and it's not mentioned in the current vision, so or mission, so something like that.
And I'd just like to suggest, if, as we're going through these, it might, rather than us sit here today, we could be for hours trying to nail these down, that if we have ideas, we can put them out there, George, and take them away and bring them back, perhaps.
Yeah.
That works. Is there anything else on the mission statement?
Maybe instead of customer friendly, customer focused. So just highlight that customer.
Focus, but be
Focus.
angry? No. George.
Could you just ask, Councilor Roger, could you repeat what you just said there so that I can get it down?
As I just said, to foster a culture of community spirit and ambassadorship to guests.
Thank you.
And you've got Deputy Mayor Bracey. Councillor Wells?
No, I'm sorry, I was just pointing out,
Oh, you're
trying to
right.
get your attention.
Okay. Councillor Foster?
And I agree with Councillor Belanger there. Instead of the word tourists, guests, or visitors or whatever, I mean, it's not, I think we have to have a term that's all inclusive. I don't know, tourists means they're coming up, we're gonna try and get their wallet and do certain things, whereas a guest, someone who's trying home, they're not a tourist, they're a guest.
Anyone else?
Is this for council to weigh in or staff as well?
Oh, if you have something to add, by all means.
I'd just like to see the word safety in there somewhere.
Oh.
So, the last line between health and safety and then common well-being, maybe just the word safety wouldn't be a bad thing to add.
Anyone else?
That's just me.
Kevin's gonna want the word trail in there, so.
Public Works.
And the environment.
Okay, all right, I think we're good there. Make that one pretty, George, and bring it
Okay.
back to us.
Thank you for the input on that. So the vision statement is a statement in terms of where we think we're going to be 20 years from now. What type of community are we going to be? What is the vision? And again, this statement was created a number of years ago, and it has been kind of the guidepost in terms of where we think we're going as a community. So is there any changes that members of council or staff would like to see in that?
Any comments on that? Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you. Some of it's implied, but on the first line, Wasaga Beach is a thriving, fully serviced, complete community. We use the word complete a lot elsewhere. And when we talk about providing a full range of services, I think, if we said a full range of services, amenities, and entertainment options, and again, change the word possibly visitors to guests.
Anyone else? Councillor Kinney?
What Mike said, safety. What Mike said, safety.
Oh, okay, all right. Jeez.
Well, then, I'd like to add kind.
Oh.
That should be a goal,
That's part of our philosophy.
that philosophy of kindness.
Thanks, Mark, I didn't want to ask again. Perfect.
Okay, anything else to add on the vision statement?
Yeah.
Okay. George, did you want to just kind of introduce your idea of having a value statement, why we perhaps need one, and that it would be good to have?
Thank you, Worship. So this is new, this has not existed before in the municipality where council would adopt a value statement in terms of the values that we hold true as an organization. There was a lot of talk about, we heard today, kindness, respect, trust, various words that define values that we want to practice in how we operate our organization, how we treat each other, how we work with each other. And I think in the absence of a value statement, sometimes you can get lost in terms of what is right and what is wrong, in terms of dealing with issues, dealing with people. And I think a value statement kind of reminds you, this is what's important, this is why we do what we do, and this is how we want to engage with various people. So I was proposing that we add a value statement. So we would have a mission, a vision, and we have a value statement. And having conversations with various staff, we thought it would be helpful just within the organization as well to kind of guide us, and Denise had a good example in terms of when we're hiring people, that we can outline the type of organization we are and what we stand for, what our values are as an organization. So we hire the right kind of people that share the corporation's values. And so that was a good example of how that can be used. So some of this work started in the fall, and where staff were asked to identify some values, and those are listed there. And then on the lower part of the sheet, there's just common core values, and you'll hear organizations talk about what is a core value. You know, these are things that are very, very important, that really define an organization, and there's a number of core values that are listed there. And then I included some sample value statements. And then I included 4 different examples from different municipalities in terms of value statements that they have adopted and have put into practice. And so I thought that with that, Your Worship, there could be a conversation, A, about is this something people want to do? And then B, what are some of the values that we feel are important as an organization that we want to make sure that are enshrined in a statement?
Okay, so I'll ask first, is there anybody here who does not believe we should have a value statement? Okay, we're in. So would you like to go through the list of them, or are you looking for, like, there's lots of different words and examples, and so how do you want this narrowed down?
Well, if I may, if there's some words that jump out that people will think this is very important, I can just circle them. You know, there's lots of good words here that.
I'm just looking at them, and the reality is, I mean, they're all good. They're all like, it would be hard to just say it's these ones. I think we'd all want to circle them all, but we can start. Councillor Kinney.
I think one that echoes from campaigning, respect and trust.
Okay. Councillor Belanger?
Well, a couple of things is, one, if when you go to the example, municipal example number 1, it puts it more into a context of a value statement. I think that would be a good one to work from. That's an awful lot to go in there, but one word that I thought was missing was collaborative. And all of the words that are there are excellent, of course, but in that example 1, they start to work them into an actual value statement, which is looks like a pretty good one.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
And again, there's words like diversity, equality, respectful, things like that I think, you know, if we look at how our town is changing and how the world is changing, you know, we have to be cognizant of diversity, whether it's gender, culture, religious, whatever it is, we have to have that as one of our founding principles, if you will, total acceptance or openness.
Chris?
I was just gonna make a suggestion that sometimes it might be easier rather than a statement, but instead to pick half a dozen or 5 values, and they may well be more deliberate if we don't try and tie them together, and then we can kind of go in a few different directions. I know this is something I've worked in other organizations that
I was
had
gonna say, I'm pretty sure you've done this before.
5 words,
Yeah.
yes, and then you live your mission, vision, and values.
So can we maybe go, you know, there's different lists here. Can we kind of go and pick 5 of each and then let staff work on something? Because like I said, like we could bat around these things all day.
Yeah.
Danny?
Certainly from my past experience, having been involved in initiatives like this as well, you know, a little task force among staff, if you really want to talk about, I mean, this is a lot of what's going to drive our culture, and you know, having staff sort of giving them a rough framework that they can work with, and then put together something that they can, you know, that our staff can really take ownership of. I think is really important. Coming from them, I think would be.
So could we just go, for instance, for the first list there, it says from staff. So we've already heard respect, trust. Is there 3 others that stand out that would be important? Pardon me?
Positive.
Positive?
I think it's team oriented.
Yeah. Anything else?
I would suggest in Kevin, because it has so many advocates of goal, honesty, fair treatment.
Okay, so we've got respect, integrity, trust, team-oriented, and positive.
Or we could just take all the words and have George put them all into one value statement.
I'm thinking no.
Values crossword.
Common core values, again, there's a long list there. Some of them are duplicated from the first list, so is there, you know, I don't want to duplicate them, but is there ones on there that would be important to have in? I'm sorry?
The first 4 are pretty good. Well, I would say, you know, honesty.
Well, we've already got respect and integrity, so you're saying honesty and accountability? Anyone else? Councilor Belanger?
Well, again, I'm going back to this other, which takes some of that back, but responsiveness, which would encompass the whole culture of customer service. Excellence, which encompasses continuous improvement, innovation, fairness, which addresses diversity, integrity, which encompasses transparency and honesty, leadership, and learning. Like, I mean, those are great words. That a lot of those other words line up very well.
And they are great, and it's somebody else's.
Yeah.
So I think we're trying to create our own. So that's why I'm just looking. So in the second column for common core values, we've got honesty and accountability. Deputy Mayor Gray?
So I too liked example number 1. I would question maybe learning as being less important than something like stewardship. I think stewardship is very important, that we all understand that there's long-term consequences to our actions, and we need to think beyond the decision for today or the short term. So stewardship.
As a common core value? Anyone else? George?
I like optimism and passion as two values.
Okay.
So safety's not one of these?
No safety. Any other
That would be
suggestions?
implied with something like excellence.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Councilor Wells?
Well, I didn't narrow it down to one word, so maybe can't do it. I just kind of played with 4 phrases, to want of a better word. First one was cooperation, or it could be cooperative attitude, might be another way of saying it, but the sense of cooperation. My second one was empathy, respect, and understanding. My
My third one was honesty, integrity, and transparency. And my fourth one was inclusiveness.
Okay. Anyone else? Doug?
This is a sort of different brush. I've seen different shapes of core values, and I've seen them described in terms, the way we're looking at it now, but I've also seen it described in a top-down approach, who we are, what we do, and how we do it. And I've just practiced the words, I'll throw them out there, but it's only food for thought. From the top-down approach, the corporation of the town of Wasaga believes in the democratic will of its citizens, the integrity in the performance and the role of local government, and the fair, honest, and unbiased treatment in the delivery of services. So I'm not suggesting that's the word we should follow, but I'm just suggesting there's an approach that shows the top down from who we are, what we do, and who we do it for.
Doug, you just got yourself a seat on that team committee. Is there anything else from that list? I like the idea that Doug had, but I think that we need to just kind of pick our words and send it back, and I'm sure that we'll pick it apart again another day. But the next one was sample value statements. Is there anything there that stands out to anyone?
Just for me, I liked example number 1 because it's kind of short and sweet. It's something that you can see put across the.
Oh, sorry, I was on the sample values.
Oh, okay, no, I didn't like those at all.
No. Oh, okay.
Municipal example number 1, I think, is an example of a value statement. And I liken it to the Simcoe District School Board where they have those colored blocks and each one stands for, you know, character and commitment and integrity. But it's very visual, it's very, I think your value statement should be something on the wall of every office or council chambers that you can kind of look to and quickly grasp the, you know, is it fair to all is one of the questions that I ask myself when I'm reading through a staff report or recommendation. So I think that you want that quick reference.
And I think when you look at the municipal examples, that one is the one that would stand out. That format. Councilor Boulanger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a point, and I've been through a number of these exercises too, and even looking at the mission and vision, they're quite lengthy. Like the litmus test is that every member of the organization, if they were asked, what is your mission, vision, and values, that they would be able to answer. And in many organizations, the average associate within that organization has no clue. And if you look at them, some of them it's because of the length or the complexity. And so if it's something that you're going to live every day, then it has to be able to roll off the mouth of every associate within the organization.
And it goes back to perhaps what I said last week when we were talking about customer service, and it was a common theme in pretty well every department. And that is words are cheap. So whether they're 5 words or whether there's 50 words, you know, we have to have something that translates from a word to an action or to a belief or to a culture. And so whatever the version of the words are, you know, they're gonna hit these various values, and we're all gonna agree. Stan, we know we'll wordsmith it a little bit always, but you're sitting there going, it has to hit the corporate culture clearly, and it does have to be bought into, maybe not memorized, but bought into from every person who's working on a front line to senior management to council. And again, we're only temporary custodians in the chair, right? We're only here for 4 years, and then it's a whole new ball game. So, but it has to be something that, you know, so we can fire this down, but I agree with, I think it was Danny said that. It's gotta go from the bottom up as well. Like, you know, we may put out an idea, and then it goes to each individual department, and they have a little staff meeting and say, does this make any sense to you? And we hope they're brutally honest and say, yeah, it's just words, or no, I get it. And that's what we're hoping for. If we get the I get it, that's where the synergy happens. So.
Yeah, and I agree, I think there should be a team that can deal with it, because to have this many people around a table and trying to narrow this down is difficult. Did you?
Well, sort of, but you kind of nailed it. I mean, it's, I think having some representation from various service areas around, the corporation sort of building this, I think it's good. You can't figure it out.
Is everybody kind of comfortable with that? George, is that something that would work for you?
No, I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay.
I think that's great, and again, it's, as been said, I think everybody participates, we get buy-in from everybody, and then it becomes what we are. It becomes embedded in our fiber, and that's what we want in everything that we do. So no, I think that's a good idea.
All right, thank you. Next on our list is next steps.
Your Worship, there's a couple of things. We talked a little bit about some presentations that we haven't had yet, and I'm just going to go through a quick rundown. I did talk with the detachment commander for Huronia West of the OPP, and he would like to come and make a presentation in terms of their goals and objectives and whatnot, what they see the detachment in the next 4 to 5 years. And policing is a very important part of our community, so he'd like to come. Talked a little bit about Ontario Parks, and talked with Greg Forbes, and he's planning on coming as well. The folks from OLG, Jake Pastore and his team, have indicated a desire to come and talk to council in terms of the municipality's role with respect to the selection of the gaming site, et cetera, what the new landscape is with respect to gaming in Ontario. So they're planning on coming as well. We talked a little bit about the tourism and branding exercise. Some of that's been underway, but members of council aren't familiar with it. And Ellen and I have chatted about having a presentation on that so that members of council can be brought up to speed with respect to that. And then we talked a little bit about the Chamber of Commerce and the role of tourism and that transition in terms of tourism and what the town's responsible for and what the chamber will be responsible for going forward. And this one is somewhat critical in the sense that it has budget implications in terms of what council decides to do with respect to that. So, with council's permission, I'd like to start to make arrangements for these presentations. As council is aware, we do have limited time in terms of one committee the whole, a month, and a coordinated committee. And I'd like to suggest this format of back at Town Hall in the classroom. If we could go on a Thursday afternoon, 1 to 4, and I could try to line up on successive Thursdays a number of presentations. We have these presentations, but we also have some issues. Beachfront, making some decisions in the town's role of the beachfront, downtown, the CIP presentation. So from my standpoint, if we can look to block Thursday afternoons from 1 till 4, and I could try to schedule those afternoons to start to address these issues and these presentations. So that's next steps with that part, and then I have some more.
Okay, and I think that's an excellent idea. There is a lot, I mean, we've been busy up to this point, but I think we have a lot to deal with, and once we finalize some of these things, then I think that kind of sets the path, and it's important to get it done. So is there any objection to specific members? Probably in February we would start with Thursdays. We could circulate dates as well, just to confirm with everybody, but.
If I may, then what I'll do is these various people, I'll suggest to them a number of Thursdays, and we'll start to fill the agenda. I want to talk to staff as well I know there's lots of interest in the CIP and the official plan update downtown, so when can they come and present? So we'll try to make it a full, 3 hours, 1 to 4, 1 to 4, 1 to 4, so that council gets the best information that it needs to make decisions.
Okay, thank you. What else?
So just from this exercise here, Your Worship, what I propose to do is bring a report forward from Committee of the Whole under your name, recommending to council next Tuesday that council adopt the priorities, not the full list of all the details, but basically the 10 or 11 key statements that we talked about. The other stuff will be more of the action plans and whatnot, but just to give the community and members of council an outline in terms of what your goals are for this term. And I'll draft the report and council can consider it next Tuesday. So that's what I was proposing to do for the exercise that we've been doing for the last couple of weeks.
Okay, that's good. Any comments on that? I think we just have to change our motion a bit, maybe.
I'm just looking at the motion, just to finish up, because the mission and vision, we'll bring that at a later date. We'll work with staff committee on the value statement. We'll bring that at a later date, so those will come back.
Yeah. Lesson in the car. It's different.
That's right.
But it's in our world.
You did? Oh, great.
The library should have one of those for there's gotta be a few people that have one in their place that they don't use.
That's pretty well regular about karaoke.
Exactly, that's what they should do. You know, you put a collar over certain things, so that just people eliminate them. Because you know, we all we thought was a great idea. The exercise.
Cool people down there. A lot of use for 6 months, and then it just makes lottery.
Or no, not the exercise, the rebound.
Oh, yeah. Rebound.
The rebounder. I had the original rebounder, like the $400 rebounder, not the $50.
What's the one with the twists and you can twist the machine that's over there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll read the motion that George has created here. The mover was Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Wells, so hopefully you're okay with the changes. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council adopt the priorities as outlined, and further that the proposed mission, vision, and value statements be you really should read these, George, be referred to staff for review and recommendation to committee. Okay.
If I may, Your Worship, just where in that first paragraph at the end, maybe you can just say for this term of council, maybe just add that as
right.
outlined for this term of council.
Okay, so if the mover and seconder is okay with that, I'll try reading it again. Moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Wells, be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council adopt the priorities as outlined for this term of Council, and further that the proposed mission, vision, and value statements be referred to staff for review and recommendation to committee.
We'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor?
Councillor Watson?
Favor?
Councillor Wells?
In favor?
Mayor Refolchi?
In favor?
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. Motion is carried.
Okay, next item on our list is a motion moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole Council recommends to Council that it grant partial approval to the 2019 budget consisting of the items noted in the staff report prior to the final approval of the entire 2019 budget. So who's speaking to this? Jocelyn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The staff report addresses the 3 items that, because of time sensitivity, we're asking if council is prepared to approve these items now so that they could begin. And one of the items is the fire truck that has been identified in draft 1 because of the time it takes to issue the information and get the process started for ordering the truck and the build time and then delivery, hopefully taking delivery in this fiscal year. So there's that item. There's also a request to extend our current managed services contract for IT services for another 6 months as we continue to evaluate what is the right format for us to have for those services. We're still working with Simcoe County to decide if there's services there that would support us. So in order, because this contract ends in February, we need to move forward now with a temporary renewal for 6 months. And the last item was we have an event for the Victoria Day weekend that this year is being proposed to be initiated. And this, again, this event, we need to line up some of the services required to have entertainment and have that event go forward. And we need to begin those services, those activities now.
Okay, questions? Councillor Foster?
Thank you. And my question could be probably answered by the clerk or the CAO. It's actually the notice policy piece on page 3, which is talking about us waiving the town's notice for section 5, and then later on it says there's no requirement to give notice on budget approval. So I just want to make sure from a precedent or an openness point of view that we're not outside of the norm. I get the timeline. I don't have a problem with the timeline on any of this. I just want to make sure that we're falling within the guidelines and not putting ourselves in a, where we're counteracting ourselves.
I'm gonna ask the clerk to address this because we did have, I know in my time on council, I don't remember this emergency clause ever being used. So, can you explain that, please, loudly?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship. The notice bylaw does have an emergency provision under section 5. It also allows for time-sensitive matters. So perhaps the title of the provision should be changed a little bit to really encompass some of those things. So if a matter arises which in the opinion of the clerk in consultation with the mayor is considered to be time-sensitive, the notice provisions of the notice bylaw can be waived. In this case, Jocelyn has brought forward to committee, which allows committee to make that decision as well, or just to notify committee that we will use this provision. The notice bylaw requires 14 days notice in the paper. We don't have 14 days, but we still have a certain period if committee is comfortable with that period.
So basically, we normally, for the entire budget, we would have that 14 days, but these are pieces of the budget. So we're basically just making sure we're covering by using Wasaga.
And 2/3 of the items are relatively small ticket, like the extension of the for the computer security piece, and even I understand the May 24th one. The other piece we're talking about is almost a $500,000 hit. Well, 400. I don't want to round up. And so I'm going to 550. Thank you. Whatever the so I guess my question then to the fire chief would be, is 14 days gonna make a difference to have proper notification? And I don't know whether he wants to answer that or not. Again.
You know, I'm gonna let Jocelyn
Yeah.
answer.
Thank you. I don't believe we have enough time to, put this before the February council and still have a 14-day notice period, because we could not advertise until next Friday in the paper, and then another 14 days, and I believe we'd be beyond February council, and then we have to go into the March council.
So hearing that, and I appreciate the explanation on that, then I'm comfortable knowing that when the full budget does come out, it will follow all the proper guidelines. Thank you for the explanation.
But again, through the clerk, you can confirm we are following a process.
We're following a process that's already allowed in the notice bylaw that council has passed, as well as I think, Councillor Foster, when you mentioned that there's no notice necessary for the budget, I think that refers to the municipal act. So the municipal act doesn't require the 14-day notice. It's our notice bylaw that's actually an extra layer of notice that we've added.
Good.
Mayor Bray?
Thank you. Question through to the director of our recreation facilities. To Chris. The recommendation for an event on Victoria Day weekend, does that confirm that there is no external events that have expressed interest in coming to town on that weekend?
That's correct. Yeah. We don't have a revisiting of electric elements or any other new event proposed at this time.
And do we think that, so it's a one-day event that we're proposing, I think from 3 till 10, so it's kind of, I don't know, it seemed like an odd time for me, to have a 1 day of a 3-day weekend. Most of our internal events are usually 2 days, and they incorporate like that encouragement for the overnight stay if it is visitors that are coming up. Is there some thought behind this that?
Well, I think in year one, we are trying to activate a portion of the weekend. I sense that we could develop further layers to that event in future years. We started with the Thanksgiving in a similar format, that we picked one day and sort of concentrated our efforts, thinking that perhaps the middle of the weekend would be the most advantageous, or at least to attract people. I shouldn't say the middle, at the earlier half of the weekend, that they may end up staying for the rest.
Thank you.
We struggle with $48,500 for an event that we pay for. I always thought the mandate was to have events come in and pay either way, or we help with or partially subsidize with work in kind between public works and the various departments to help with some of the stuff. That's for 1 day event. Fireworks, or how many times do we have fireworks in the municipality now?
This would count 4. Three so far.
Money up and smoke for that, so I'm not comfortable with that event. The other 2 items, I believe on this.
Yes, a couple of comments. It's just, even though we're approving the budget, I think some of the more critical timelines is related to entertainment and whatever. So is this something that could come to council with more detail for some of the finer points, like the fireworks or that type of thing? And then my other comment would be to the point of it being a 1-day event. There is a possibility that, similar to we do with other events, where there may be some venues in town that might be willing to participate in the theme and hire entertainment on their own dime and do something on the Friday night. That would still encourage overnight stay, because certainly, we have 4 or 5 venues that it's quite common for them to book entertainment.
Alan, did you?
There was some talk earlier about trying to do a brand rollout that weekend, and there may be some opportunity to work together with the events unit on that. Is there an opportunity for conversation?
Certainly, I think the idea is, so further to Councillor Blanche's comment as well, we put a line in here that we would offer out the opportunity to the local restaurants and bars to perhaps augment this, and if we can come up with something that becomes a long weekend tradition in May in Wasaga that goes beyond just this first night, I think staff are very open to it. We have had other private promoters come to us. In fact, there was a second event. It was based loosely around EDM or electronic sort of youthful music. We're trying to go a little bit more mainstream with this family-oriented event. But I would lastly be beyond taking on branding exercises to turn it into some sort of a community celebration. The booking of the band does change every couple weeks. We start to lose the one that we had traction with because they get booked, and long weekends are tricky to book talent. So that's only a portion of the total budget, but a significant piece of trying to, make it a 7 or 8 hour target with probably a 90 or at best 2 hour entertainment piece with sort of a headline act.
Okay, Councillor Wells?
Yeah, I'm just looking and I'm not opposed to using the term that's in the bylaw, or the clause, but I'm looking at my calendar. We have council on the 22nd. If this is held off just here, I don't think 4 weeks will make a necessary difference to the building of a fire truck. I'm not sure how it would impact the Victoria Day weekend, although I don't think there's any reason why staff can't be talking with people in terms of looking to approvals, but getting some sense of who might be there. The other one, with Jocelyn, if I may ask, when does our current 6-month contract expire?
Through the chair, it expires February 13th.
February 13th, okay. Because what I was doing is looking at my calendar saying, if we waited, this clearly we could make all of the provisions of the bylaw the 14-day, because you've got from the 22nd, you now have the newspaper on the 24th to the 31st to the 7th. Actually, and then there's another week after that because our meeting is on the 19th of February. So there's actually 21 days available to do the appropriate notification. As I say, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm thinking in my own mind, I think we can fulfill the timelines without causing a significant problem.
Well, I guess we have the option to vote on all these items separately. We can defer it. George, can you weigh in here?
Your worship, you can split the motion and vote on each of them on an individual basis. That would be appropriate. I think the only one I think that is really critical, as I hear it, is the special event because of the booking of the bands. That the others, I think could wait. It's just up to council.
Well, I guess the CompuSolve one I would be concerned
It's a
about.
critical one
I
as
think
well,
that's
because
critical.
of
I don't
dates.
think that can. And then we've got, sorry, you said special events, and the event is as well. So I'm going to look to the chief and say, what would delaying this do to your situation?
Well, as it's stated in the report, fire trucks are a 300-day build. So if we want to advertise for tenders, accept the tenders, you have to review the tenders, make a decision, meet with the successful proponent, go over the details, and then start the build. We'll take delivery in probably February, March of next year, too much longer. And it's still in 2020.
And if we we approve this today, when would?
Well, we can hopefully, like, next week or very early the following week, have an ad-in for tenant.
But when would we get it?
Well, I think if we get on this, we can have it delivered, in Q4.
Councilor Watson?
Your worship, for clarification on the wording, it says the purchase was considered as part of the 2018 capital budget and was deferred to 2019. What does that mean? And is it in our first draft of our current budget now, this vehicle in there? But when it says considered, I don't see approved.
Through the chair, it is in our current draft one budget for 2019. In 2018, we did bring it forward in the first draft of the budget then, and at that time it was not approved to go forward for 2018, but was to be brought forward again for consideration in 2019. Councilor Bourget?
No, I was just going to reiterate the fact that it was related last year, so we had already extended the life of the vehicle, and now we're really extending it another year given the build, so.
Okay, so I'll look around the room. Do you want to split these individually or go at once? Councilor Watson? Laura, are you?
One specific you want to split out, or do you want to vote on all 3 or 4 items?
I would like the Victoria Day weekend split out, the other two.
And I think because there's probably varying opinions around the table. I think we should just do all 3 separate.
Just so I get my head around this, we could, theoretically, we could look at the Victoria Day weekend, for example. We could sit there and say, yeah, we approve it now. But I think Councilor Belanger suggested that there is some level of control, or, you know, staff still have to come back and say, this is what we want to do. So, I mean, there is a piece of control or some kind of oversight for us somewhere down the line, right? Especially if they're trying to make it a.
Okay, I'm gonna look to Jocelyn.
Yeah, okay.
And use support here. So, I'm not quite clear on, are you meaning on the events?
I'm talking about the event itself, yeah. Like somewhere the staff's gonna tell us what the idea is before, or isn't. Okay.
Chris, can you address that?
Certainly, Your Worship, Councillor Wells, yeah,
Foster.
Yeah. Councillor Foster, we don't typically release the name of the artist until we have a signed contract. And this typically takes us a negotiation. It's not as simple as typical purchasing. Often it's back and forth a number of times, and we have to formalize what they require in a rider for their accommodation, sound system, all these things, and then we evaluate our costs. We think we're pretty close with this estimate with a good rider, good artist that will work with a local radio station as well. But it's possible that they're shopping right now and then we lose them to another offer. We literally bid and then back and forth for a couple weeks, and that's where it could be the end of March by the time we're 100% with this budget in place, or coming back for other monies.
Again, and my own opinion is I don't believe staff would be bringing any of these items forward today if they hadn't thought through the process and didn't think that they needed to be here. So I will be supporting all of them moving forward. Councilor Watson?
I'm really changing the wording on this Victoria Day weekend of up to, as opposed to spending this amount of money, so that we can modify. Fireworks is one example, whether we would like to modify that, the concept is there, go ahead and do it. But means that, you know, my check, we're gonna spend 48.5, or, you know, necessary to spend that money.
Well, and I guess the items are there, so if there's something that somebody feels shouldn't be there, then we can dig deeper and start voting things off of that list. Chris?
I could speak very specifically to the fireworks. It's roughly $5,000. So that we could modify in that sense if the general consensus is fireworks may not be a necessary expense that night. We do always have very good traction with fireworks events, and that's how we think we might start to build out some sort of a community celebration on the long weekend in May, by starting it with this fireworks idea that people will, the show will start at 3 and sort of finish at 10 when it's dark, families might be able to attend to.
Councillor Laje?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just gonna clarify that if the fireworks wasn't so critical, but at $5,000, I was gonna speak to your concern, Councillor Watson, but at $5,000, I would also appreciate that.
Okay, so I think staff are just working on the individual motions. Okay, Pam's willing to do karaoke while we wait.
The Muzak version of Let's Get Physical.
Well, Councillor Kenny is known for being able to beatbox.
Oh, we'd like to see that.
Well, to her worship and the rest of the council, I think Councillor Foster is misinformed.
Is that fake news?
Not going there.
Oh, I see. Okay,
I can just explain. Yeah. Okay, so the easiest thing, since we're separating them out now, is that we would defeat the one that's already been read, so that we can do these three, correct? Or, yeah.
I would say the problem with that is defeating this motion defeats these separately, so I would think that, council's amend the motion, so that they could be considered separately.
Okay.
If those agreed to the for friendly amendment.
From Councillor Watson and Councillor Wells.
I'm sorry?
You're good with amending this to?
Yes.
Oh, hold on one second. Okay, so I'll read it again. It's moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved, the committee of the whole of council recommends to council that it grant partial approval to the 2019 budget consisting of the items noted in the staff report prior to the final approval of the entire 2019 budget, and that the motion be amended to allow separate consideration of items. Okay.
We'll go for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kenny?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor?
Councillor Wells?
Favor?
Mayor by motion.
In favor.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
the first one is moved by Deputy Mayor Bray, seconded by Councillor Foster. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole of Council recommends to Council that it grant partial approval of the 2019 budget consisting of, what do we want it to say? Oh, just, okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure before I finished reading it. So Committee of the Whole of Council recommends to Council that it grant partial approval of the 2019 budget consisting of the Victoria Day event noted in the report.
We'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kenny?
In favor.
Councillor Watson? Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor by Fulton?
In favor.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed. The motion is carried.
Next, it's moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Boulanger. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole of Council recommends to Council that it grant partial approval to the 2019 budget consisting of the fire truck noted in the report.
We'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kenny?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor by Fulton?
In favor.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
It's moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Watson. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole of Council recommends to Council that it grant approval to the 2019 budget consisting of the 6-month renewal of Compusol contract noted in the report.
Call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kenny?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor by Fulton?
In favor.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Okay. Items for future meetings, there are none. There's no closed session. Report from closed session, there are none, so we are adjourned. Thank you.